Can you guys hear me? Cool. So today I'm your moderator from DAO Zero. I'm Zoe. So today we're having these four amazing friends from Funding Commons Taipei, two main organizers here, Vivian and Noah, and two guests, Ellie and Shirley. So why don't we start by introducing a little bit more about yourselves and more about your projects. So Ellie?
Sounds good, yeah. Hello, my name is Ele. I'm originally from Greece, but I'm based in Berlin, Germany. I founded the Radical project, which is a decentralized network for code collaboration. And then also the last 2 years, I've been spending my time on a project that we call DRIPS, which is a toolkit for funding public goods and specifically your critical software dependencies.
Hi everyone, I'm Shirley. I'm from Gameforce. We're a Swiss-based non-for-profit. I am originally from Australia, but now I'm based in Paris. So what we do is we go out to projects on the ground and we want to stop deforestation by 2030. So we have created a different system for funding new mechanisms through smart contracts and linking donations to impact on the ground.
Hi guys, my name is Noah. I'm the organizer at DAO Zero. So I'm from Taiwan and based in Taiwan. And so at DAO Zero, we basically do a couple of things that's related to public goods, including Taiwan's decentralized ID. We do research on DAOs, we do RPGF, retroactive funding, experiments, and all that kind of things.
Hi, I'm Vivian, also part of DAO Zero. We started DAO Zero last year, basically wanting to accelerate civic technology and wanting to engage in the movement, and which is like a really important part of public goods and the whole ecosystem. Noah and I kind of met in Funding Commons, New York last year and decided, we want to bring this important initiative to Taiwan, and that's how we ended up here.
Right, all right. So Vivian, why don't you start by tell us more about the story behind bringing Funding Commons here in Taipei? What is the primary goal you guys are hoping to achieve with this initiative?
So what's really interesting about New York is that we actually went there for NFT NYC, and like.
Oh, you did too?
I went there for the parties to get drunk. So at NFT NYC, there's like all these different vibe around, like people talking about NFT, token price, and different stuff. And then we saw this event on the weekend called Funding the Commons with a topic that I don't really understand. But when I enter, I realized how people are all talking about how we can design a better mechanism to basically change the world, basically better facilitate or incentivize people in an open source community, which is a really fundamental layer for blockchain and Web3 development. And what I realized is that a lot of things that the people in New York has been sharing, actually Taiwan has been doing the stuff already. Taiwan has really good example, but no one really knows about it. So that's when we, that's how I started the idea of like bringing this conference to Taiwan, introducing Taiwan's example to the world, and at the same time bringing the conversation of this mechanism building, something that's so important to Taiwan, so that see how we together can contribute to the ecosystem.
Yeah, for me, it's also very interesting. I think Funding Commons, so through my career, I've been doing a lot of stuff, big tech companies, startups, Silicon Valley, and all that kind of things. And I think at least what I was looking for has always been value-aligned work, as well as the opportunity to actually do something, to make impact, right? Whether it be startups, Google, or whatever other companies. But I think when I went to Funding the Commons, it's really, those things are very much aligned. I can feel the momentum of the public goods sector, that there are a lot of momentum for innovation. There are a lot of new conversations, new talks, new mechanisms that we can discuss, and also new experiments that's already been done, and a community that provides tools, open source, and whatever support that you need. So there's the opportunity part. On the other side, I'm always looking for things that does align that after a year, I still have the passion, still have the momentum to do. So that's what I found at Funding Commons. So in the end, me and Vivian was talking to the host about bringing Funding Commons to Taipei, and we did that last weekend, which is good. But I think that's a good start for Asia to kick off all these conversations.
Awesome. So Noah, can you following question? Can you briefly introduce public goods to the audience? The definition.
So public goods is what everyone wants, but nobody pays for. So basically, clean air, climate, and even AI safety, right? No specific. Usually these things are paid for from the government, but the government has very limited resources. They have limited attention that they can look at various different categories, projects, and all that. So I think it's very obvious in our era, in our time, there must be some other alternatives to support public good sector other than just government. We can't all rely on them. And the government has other problems. Sometimes the government's intention does not always align with that of the people, right? So there's also that. So building all these kind of public goods mechanisms into the infrastructure of our society, I think that is very, very important. The kind of public goods we talk about today mostly are digital public goods, but there are, of course, other stuff that are also very important to talk about in the following years.
Good, thank you. So following question for Ellie. You're building DRIPS and also Radical, and you're helping people building public goods. So what are your takeaways building this?
Yeah, maybe to add on what Noah was saying, and maybe to give a more formal definition of public goods. A more formal way to think about public goods is that these are goods that you cannot exclude people from accessing those, and when people consume them, they don't subtract from other people, right? So one way to think about it is that, of course, the air we're breathing, right? You cannot exclude anyone from accessing that good. And then, when I, consume that air, that doesn't mean there's less air for you, Zoe, right? So I'm more focused on digital public goods. For that, on the internet, I think the thing that immediately people think about is open source software, right? So open source software is, out there for everyone. You cannot exclude people from accessing it, and when people consume it, that doesn't mean that the other people have less of it, right? But I think, as Noah said, there is traditionally we've been relying on governments to think about how to fund. We've been collectively funding public goods through government, but of course, many times our social institutions and our social technologies, break down. And the way I got interested in funding public goods is mostly from a place of appreciating what you have, not taking it for granted, and deciding to do something about this. And then specifically moving to our work with DRIPS is that on the internet, if you think about, we're having this beautiful conference right here, there are all of these exciting projects out there, all of them rely on some form of open source software, which many times is, just a random person on the internet maintaining tirelessly, and stressing to keep it up and running and, secure for everyone. So there is a problem with that. And at some point, I just, noticed that problem, and I realized that this is one of the most important problems to actually work on at the moment. And that's why I started working on DRIPS and why I think this is important.
Great, thank you. So next, Shirley, do you want to tell us more about Gainforests?
So before I started with Gainforest, I think I would talk back about working in the government space. So I was in the Australian government for 5 years, and I would price your public transport, your water system, your open space. So when you kind of look in this, as a government agency, you are constantly looking at what do you need to provide for the public, and how do you allocate those funds properly so that those are the focus. But trying to get the outreach and the stakeholder engagement by a lot of people to actually have an input for what you're going to fund is also quite difficult. And you don't really know the impact of how much that kind of goes in. So when I kind of joined Gainforest, it's I was also doing environmental and sustainable policy on energy efficiency, and I realized that climate as a topic, it's so important for us, and it's very hard to measure and value this. So going into Game Forest, we kind of want to do and have that causal link between your impact and measuring that. So we have a technology that's measure to earn. We kind of talk to the people on the ground, we know what they want, and we get them to measure the data, and that data fuels the science behind how we can actually make a contribution to stopping deforestation, to kind of make a change to the climate. So that's kind of the purpose of where Game Forest kind of came in. We linked the donation system, so if you're interested in donating, we've used Web3 to kind of allow that, and now we're kind of going back bottom up, looking at the communities, what are the impacts that we need to do? How do we fund their lifestyle so that they can stop deforestation and take action on the ground? And so it's like a bottom up and a top down approach, both of them together.
Got it. So since you guys mentioned that it's hard to build public goods, right? So alongside your journey, what are exactly can you elaborate more of the difficulties and challenges you guys encounter on building the product towards public goods? Ellie?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first problem is awareness. Most people take for granted, the things around them. You see this globally right now with climate change, right? Suddenly the world has woken up that this thing is not to be taken for granted, and we need to do something about it, both, through our governments, but also individually, right? So bringing awareness that we live in these ecosystems, and these ecosystems are something to, worry about and think about is something that is very important. And that's why I think the movement of funding the commons, and I'm really happy, that this is happening in Taipei. I came mostly for that here. So it's very important because it raises awareness around the fact that, hey, don't take things for granted, actually, value what you have and, do something for that. So that's the first thing that I think is always hard, opening up the conversation, you ask around people, and many people don't even know what is a public good, right? So that's the one thing, awareness. And then the second thing, especially, I think generally for public goods is of course incentives, right? You always have what we call the tragedy of the commons. Every person thinks that they don't need to do something about it because the other person next to them maybe should be doing something about it, right? So aligning incentives and coming up with clever ways to incentivize people to do things. This is, what most of our space spends most of their time on. The last thing I want to say here is when I'm talking about incentives, I'm not exclusively talking about financial incentives. Financial incentives are one component in the whole conversation, but there are more incentives that mechanism designers explore in order to find creative solutions to that problem.
So I think it's an evolving space, so your product needs to always be relevant to the community that you're working towards and also your customers and your donors. So it doesn't matter if you're in the public space or even the private space. The public space is obviously harder because it's harder to measure the impact and the value, but regardless, it's product fit. It's trying to satisfy what they need. So when you have donors, they've got to the stage where they have maybe a bunch of money and they want to sponsor a project. They want to see what that goes to. And if your product can clearly show that causal impact, that kind of will make it more convincing to them that what they're spending on is worth it. And that's just normally even for a business or the public. So for public, we just want to show that all the benefits, the externalities of the climate, it's going to affect you in the long run. And once we can show that impact, then that really kind of tailors to satisfying their need for that. Yeah.
Everything they said, and everything else too. I think because I did build startups and all that in the last life, and so everything is a little bit harder. But one thing I think is a little bit easier, which is just very random. I think the people is actually, and the community is actually easier, and I think that's also because when you're building for the betterment of the world, when you're building for other people, when you're building for altruistic goals, people come together somehow. and people come together in a more easygoing way, and people want to support each other, people want to help each other, and people understand each other a little more as well. Instead of just having a mechanism telling you if you do this, you get how much more commission. That we're not robotics, right? We're a group of people sharing the same vision, sharing same inspiration, aspirations, and I think that's also the for us too. We can feel a connection that we all want to make the world a better place. We share the same inspiration, connection, and that grows up to many different things. So that's what I would say is a little bit easier, I think.
I do want to add to that. One thing I learned from Funding Commons this year is there's a speaker called Debrusha. She's from the Auckland team. She raised this really interesting idea. Like, what I realized that doing public goods and thinking about incentive mechanism, it's basically playing with human psychology. It's basically understanding how human beings react to every single trigger you give them. And when it comes to donation, one thing really interesting is when people donate, they actually don't want anything like to come back to them. They just want to donate. They want to feel like they are contributing. But a lot of the design around donation is that if you donate, you will get a swag, you will get some sort of merchandise to prove that you actually donate. And proving that you actually donate is something that's so important. But like when it comes to public good buildings or public good funding, it's kind of the same. Like when people are supporting an ecosystem, they are actually just doing that because they have the passion for the thing. And that, I think, is a really core value when we're building something. But it's so easy to forget because people always assume that people don't care about public goods or the thing we are building. But it's actually really core and embedded in the human like fundamentals.
Just one fun fact. If you guys have there's a global report called World Happiness Report, and there are 6 factors that makes a country or the people inside that country happy, and one of them is the amount of donations they make. It's a positive correlation. It's not definitely causal and stuff, but I think when people make donations, they do want to see the impact they made. They want to see the impact they make on other people, but that's one of the things that make people happy, I would say.
I guess for open source software, I think a lot of people also build it for fun, right? So it's a side project you start with. You're like, this really annoys me, and if I build this, I have a lot of happiness because it solved the problem, and everyone else is like, wow, like, this is also solves my problem. So building software that's open source is generally just satisfying our own satisfaction as developers. We're like, oh, I made something that's useful and fun for ourselves.
Yeah, maybe one additional thought to everything that has been said. I think there's a jump, right? Like from thinking about public goods and not doing anything, not contributing to them, or like not donating, not building anything, and then the moment you do that, there's something that is happening, like in your human psychology, and suddenly you have the experience of giving, and that experience actually so strong inside of you. Analytically, it's really hard to reason what's happening inside of you, right? But I highly recommend to everyone to actually contribute to public goods, and usually that makes you feel a lot better about yourself. So yeah, try it out.
We're a group of happy people.
Yeah. So what is like a roadmap for like next 5 years you guys envisioned in this public goods section?
Yeah, I mean that's a really interesting question. I think it's hard to reason about the future, but looking about the last decade, at least in the United States and in Europe, we had, I don't want to call it a collapse, but our social institutions degraded, which made a lot of people actually consider taking the initiative themselves in supporting the public goods in their regions. And I think this is creating now a movement, like a lot of innovation in mechanism design, and generally people doing things. So in the next 5 years, I expect to see this be a bigger part of the story, a bigger part of the narrative. The other thing that's happening, which is also interesting, is that also our social institutions right now are being challenged by technology in new ways, right? Think about this industry that we are all in. Most of these projects operate beyond borders, right? So there's no single government actually that really can take care of. You can coordinate around it, right? So what I expect to see from this industry a lot more is this idea of self-regulation and try to build this positive reputation by doing through funding or building effectively public goods.
Shirley?
Yeah, I agree with you, what you said. What I see in the space is we're going to have a lot more collaborators. I think a lot of people, now that we have easy access to understand what everyone is doing, people are going to join more projects together. So if you were working something in silo before, you'll know like there's other projects around and you can work together. So I think there'll be a lot more collaboration, and then that will lead to, I think, a tip in like scaling. So you start targeting more and more probably like even government agencies, and they want to take part in this kind of collaboration that they can see that most people in the commons doing first, and then they would have that uptake. So they'll probably be closer to a second mover. But with the community that we're building now, that collaboration is so valuable, and I think that's where we're going to see the scaling.
For me, it's always still it's not a vision, but it's a hope, right? I would hope in 5 years, more people can contribute in this public goods area. And the reason being, there are a lot more people who are much more brilliant than I am. If we can get more brilliant people to come into space and start building, then the mechanism of society might start changing a little more. But although we were talking about donations being a very fundamental thing, but people still need to survive, right? And people still need to have financial gains one way or another. However, if you look at, I'm talking about happiness more than I should, but if you look at the, if you guys know, there's a report that says if you earn, your annual earning is more than $70,000 or $75,000 dollars per year, then your happiness score basically plateaus. And at a certain point, it even goes down, right? So how do we get people to that point, earning that's just enough, reach their maximum happiness at the same time they can do value-aligned work? I think that's one of the most important things that I want to draw attention to the space and build a mechanism for that somehow.
I would say it's definitely a combination of everything you just say. It's definitely speaking to its collaborative nature of open source community and the projects, and also how contributing to something actually makes people happy. So I think more focus on the human layer, like how people actually interact with each other and how people are affected by every single thing we do, instead of just looking into pure technical mechanism, would be, I think, definitely a direction that we should look into.
Got it. So following question, do you guys want to share more about your personal story? What motivated you towards building or working for public goods? Anyone? Vivian?
Sure. So I've always been a human rights activist, started on women's rights and children's rights, and also some part of democracy. And what I understand about blockchain is that it's open source, that the tech itself is actually very much speaking to democracy and basic human rights. It's a tool that can potentially bring rights back to people, and that's very powerful for in any aspect, especially for a digital era where we can it's harder and harder for us to differentiate different information or even understand what our choices are and in this really extreme world, having a technology that can help people understand what really happened, go back to the history, document everything. It's like a really important infrastructure layer that really speaks to me. So starting from there and entering this whole world of public goods, which is facilitating the development of what I just mentioned. That whole process is definitely inspiring for me.
Thank you. Noah?
I think I just got too bored selling Google Ads to people. But it's true. Google is a wonderful company, wonderful people, brilliant people. But it's really hard to find value in selling search ads and all that for me personally. And so I want to spend time doing things that I can see direct impact on other people's lives. I think it's very, very simple for me.
I think for fun. You realize that my personality is very much for fun. So, I realized that you could do any job in the world. You can get paid doing anything. But if you do something for someone else, and even if you help the society a little bit, that feels pretty good at the end of the day. And so it's pretty fun. And I think that generally that's kind of how it kind of all started, whether it's working with the government or doing any projects on the ground, going out to the communities, you really have a sense of enjoyment in what you do, and you just don't really feel tired. So then you continue doing it and you realize it's been a while. Yeah.
Ellie?
Yeah, for me, it's been more of a selfish endeavor. I'll drop the word selfish here. What I mean by that is that at some point in my life that I realized that my personal goals and my success depends upon the success of the people around me. It's that simple. And what I mean by that is that, being a technologist, I've been, working in software for the last 15 years. You realize how much your work is possible because of someone else's free work, right? Like people actually releasing all of this free and open source work. And that has massively impacted my life. Like I think about the tools I was using 15 years ago, to write software, and I think about today. Like this is, completely different. It's a completely different landscape simply because somewhere out there, decide that they wanted to do something cool and share it with the public, not put it behind private paywalls and not keep it just for themselves. Yeah. And just, valuing that and understanding that, the things that I'm able to accomplish is because of that connection, that makes me also want to protect that connection. And that's exactly where the work that we're doing with TRIPS comes into play. Specifically, we're looking to find ways to incentivizing people to contribute to fund their critical software dependencies, and then create a tool that funding flows in that graph and reaches the deepest levels part of the stack, right? Open source software is a bit like a graph. I use a tool that someone else built, but that tool uses another tool and another tool and another tool, right? So making sure that capital is allocated to the most efficient places is something that I deeply care about.
I think I can add to Ellie's point, because I think one thing is we don't talk about leadership enough in the DAO space, crypto space, or whatever. And I think in a decentralized world, leadership is very different. Leadership is not about managing, directing, and getting people to do something that you want them to do. Instead, it's supporting, inspiring, and connecting with these people so they can do whatever they want to do. So it's not going towards the same vision, but sharing the same inspiration and supporting go their own directions. I think that's the things also Ellie was talking about a little bit.
All right, thank you guys for sharing. So to wrap up this session, I would like to I don't think we have enough people to building or working towards public goods for now at this moment. So anything you want to shout out to the audience that to encourage them to build public goods?
If you want to be happy, just build public goods.
I think eventually, if everyone kind of does it, it's cheap, easy, convenient. It's just easier to be someone good and doing something good, and you'll get compensated for it. Once everyone kind of, you think that it's at the beginning it's your first selfish needs, but eventually everyone will benefit from what you do, and actually people do value that. Over the long run, you will kind of see that. The impact is short right now, but if you look at the long-term impact, you feel a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah. Ellie?
Yeah, I mean, I'll repeat what I said before. Your success depends on public goods, so don't take them for granted. Do something about it.
Yeah, I think we do have a real chance of building a better mechanism of the society, better world at this point. So I will invite people to join us and share the inspiration, connection, and the sort.
All right, so last mile promotion. Vivian?
Oh yeah, we are. What we talked about was like decentralized leadership, right? Within this like blockchain and Web3 space, one really interesting topic is DAO, decentralized and autonomous organization, which means a group of people gathering using on-chain or not a mechanism to facilitate the organization running. And that is a new way of thinking about leadership and organizing. It's working with people, but maybe without the bureaucratic nature of a traditional organization. So if you want to explore more about building within these kind of organizations, we're doing a DAO Taipei event on Sunday. Just Google DAO Taipei.xyz and you will find more information about the event on Sunday. Yeah, look forward to seeing you guys there.
All right, guys, see you guys on Sunday. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.